Welcome. We're happy to be here this afternoon with Cody Campbell, who is he's serving a lot of roles these days. He is founder and CEO, co-CEO of Double Eagle Energy Holdings. He's also a former Texas Tech football standout. He's also not just a member of the Texas Tech Board of Regents, but recently elected chair. Congratulations, Cody.
Thank you.
And we're excited that Cody agreed to do a fireside chat with us. He's been highly involved in everything that's been going on the past few years now in college sports at this seminal moment that we're in. And because of that, and because of his strong voice, we unanimously decided that he should receive the Drake Group Education Fund Changemaker Award. And just tell you a little bit about that award, Cody. In 2017, the Drake Group Education Fund established the Changemaker Award to honor an individual or organization who's made extraordinary contributions, demonstrated informed thought leadership, and has helped advance the integrity of intercollegiate athletics. We often talk about integrity of intercollegiate athletics within the Drake Group as if it's a static ideal, something to be guarded. But the reality is that integrity is an active, ongoing effort. It requires the courage to speak up when the system drifts away from its core purpose, the education and well-being of the college athlete. A former Texas Tech standout, Cody Campbell has translated his passion for the game into a sophisticated, well-reasoned crusade for reform. Cody's journey from the gridiron to the forefront of college sports reform movement is a testament to what happens when passion meets policy. Through both his organization, Saving College Sports, and his extraordinary individual contributions, he has become one of the most vital voices in the country, advocating for fiscal responsibility, the rights and well-being of college athletes, the sustainability of broad-based sports programs, and the academic mission of our institutions. In a landscape that often rewards silence or status quo, Cody has consistently provided well-reasoned, articulate, and necessary critiques. He doesn't just point out where the physical or ethical plumbing is broken. He offers clear pathways toward repair. Cody, thank you for your investment, your intellect, and your courage. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the honor and the recognition. It means a great deal. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll just hop into our fireside chat.
Sure.
Have a lot of topics to cover here,
Yeah.
so I've got my notes. As a former Texas Longhorn swimmer, here with a former Red Raider football standout, it's a fun meeting to have two
For
people who are passionate about college sports and all they provide to young people. And I'm glad we not the camera can catch it, but we both dressed up for the occasion. Usually when a swimmer and a football player to get together, you might expect suits, but in Texas, we're wearing boots.
Right.
You know, if you aren't, are you really invested in the conversation, right? So here we are in our cowboy boots, and we're ready to dive in here. Cody, your commitment to the collegiate landscape is extensive. Your history as a decorated offensive lineman at Texas Tech, your current role as chair of the Texas Tech Board of Regents, and your significant philanthropic investments in athletic infrastructure. Your leadership of Saving College Sports initiative suggests a belief that the current model is at a breaking point. We'll start with the why, Cody. Why are you doing this, and why do you care so deeply about the future of college athletics?
Well, college athletics has affected my life on many different levels. And very few of them have to do with anything that happened on the field. So I've always felt that the character I developed, the work ethic, the ability to deal with adversity, the mental toughness that I developed, those are the things that have made me successful in life, in business, in my family, in my marriage. So I'm, grateful for the opportunity to have played sports because of those things. I enjoyed my time on the field. I enjoyed playing football. I loved it. But really, those lessons and those things that were instilled with me is really what has carried me through and made me successful in other aspects. I also have a long family history in college sports. My dad played football at Texas Tech. He was the first in his family to get to go to college because of a scholarship, because of a football scholarship. My mother's father grew up in the Dust Bowl, in a small town in Childress, Texas. he was the first in his family to go to college because of a football scholarship. And so for my family, it's changed everything, right? It's brought us to where we are, and it's a legacy that I want to see continued. Now I have a son who's a football player who has a chance to play in college, and I want to see that system exist for him and for his children and my daughter's children and everyone in the country. So I know the impact that it has, on families, because I've experienced it personally. I know the impact that it has on individuals, and I know the impact that it has on the country. And so for me, having had success in business, people think about philanthropy in different ways, but this is my way to give back. And I can leverage my financial resources, but also my time and my personal experience and knowledge of the subject to hopefully make a difference.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your son is playing football.
Mm-hmm.
How old is he?
He's 15.
Okay, so he's looking at schools already.
Oh yeah, he's
How does
being
that,
recruited by a lot of schools already. He's a talented player. He's also an offensive lineman like his dad and his granddad, and so we're doing all that, and he's getting the same things out of it already in high school that I got. He's going up and lifting weights at 6:15 in the morning, and he's working hard and learning to be tough, and and that's going to make him better and more successful throughout the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. And you have other kids that play sports?
I have 3 daughters who also play sports, and and it's important to me that they have the opportunities to develop the same skills. As I've worked through this and learned about the impact that sports have on this country. I've learned that 90% of women in C-suite roles at companies across the U.S. have a sports background, and so obviously we can't figure out exactly what it is about sports that helps women to achieve that, but it does something for them. And so having my daughters engaged in sports is very important, and making sure that they have the opportunity to be engaged in sports is very important. And so that is another driving factor for me in all of this.
Great. We'll be talking more about that too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun for you to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a specific tipping point that made you realize a new organization or a new direction was necessary?
I think so. I was appointed to the Board of Regents at Texas Tech in 2021, and that was about the same time that Texas and OU left the Big 12. And so when that happened, the boards, the way they work, they always kind of appoint a person to sort of be responsible for an issue. And they're like, you played football, why don't you figure out what's going on here? And so so I dug into it and wanted to really find out, all right, why did they leave? And what does that mean for Texas Tech moving forward? And so, I was trying to be a good fiduciary in my role as a regent, and just make sure that Texas Tech was well positioned, because athletics are very important to higher education institutions, especially ones like Texas Tech that depend largely on applications and enrollment and need to continue to grow in order to be sustainable. And there's a direct correlation between applications enrollment and on-field success and exposure through sports. And so wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to be competitive and be well positioned as we went through this transition period. And so just started doing the work and doing the research, and learned a lot about what was going on. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized how messed up the system really is and how broken it is. Mm-hmm. And how unsustainable it is on so many different levels. And so that motivated me to move just sort of beyond Texas Tech. Tried to come up with a strategy there that would help that university, but then just recognizing the impact that it has nationwide, I realized that there was an opportunity here for me to make a difference to kids all over the country, and so I set out to do that.
Fantastic. What do you hope to accomplish in this reform effort?
Well, I think that in the near term, I think that the only way to stabilize the system is through new federal law, and the courts have made it very clear that that's the only path. In the Alston v. NCAA case, which was a 9-0 unanimous decision, Justice Kavanaugh in his consenting opinion told us that exact thing, that either Congress has to act or we have to have collective bargaining in order to stabilize the system, in order to be able to set rules So that's what we have to do, you know. And I'm not one that really is supportive of the idea of being reliant on government to fix our problems, because they usually make them worse. But you know, in this case, we have no other choice. So have mounted this effort to try to influence good policy in Washington on this issue, and have found it to be educational, interesting, challenging, and frustrating. You know, I tell people, as bad as they say Washington is, it's actually worse. So I've run into that a few times, but I do feel like progress is being made, and you know, I'm hopeful that in the near future we'll be able to get something done.
You've met some good people working pretty hard on it too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We assembled a great team. You know, people who, you know, lobbyists, policy experts, you know, sports experts, media experts. You know, we've tried to leverage think tanks. You know, basically, you know, building from a foundation of good policy, and then going out from there and trying to implement that into politics, and find a way that we can get the best possible solution, you know, in front of the American people and in front of Congress.
I've looked at your website, the Saving College Sports website, and studied the policy page a few times. You note there's a lot of information there that college sports face collapse from mismanagement, lawsuits, and revenue crises. You note the 4 federal, at the time, right, moves fast in our landscape here. The 4 federal proposals that compete are the SCORE Act, the SAFE Act, Saving College Sports, and then a Senator Cruz-led legislation yet to be seen.
Right, and now there's another one that was introduced just a few days ago. I don't even know what it's titled, from Senators Schmidt and Cantwell, and so, you know, a lot of different spaghetti is being thrown at the wall, I guess you could say, right now. And at some point, we're going to have to find a way to merge all that to come to a solution. And the solution has to be bipartisan in order to pass the Senate. But there's really no reason that it shouldn't be. This is not really a partisan issue. People with all different types of political views love college sports, understand how important they are, and want to see them preserved. And so I've made friends through this process on both sides of the aisle, and have really enjoyed you know, hearing their perspectives. And it's honestly in some ways changed mine in terms of you know, I found that there are really good people on the left, really good people on the right, and really bad people on both sides as well. Some self-interested, some altruistic, and so trying to, you know, align myself with those who are smart and well-meaning, and you know, work with them to try to come up with the best solutions.
Yeah, you mentioned it's not a political issue. I think that's one of the wonderful things about sports, and college sports specifically, is that it brings people together, right, of all certain types of backgrounds, political affiliations. I know teammates, you might disagree with them, but it's such a special experience.
No doubt about it. I think that most of the problems that we have in our country today, and as divided as we seem to be, could be resolved if you're just to walk into a locker room and see the diversity of people in there, and how they all work together as a team and all get along, and you know, are all kind of in it for the same reasons and working for the same cause. If our country operated like that, we'd be we'd be doing a whole lot better than we're doing today. And so I think that's just one of the many lessons that can be derived from sport. And so you know, it's important that we don't lose it.
Yeah, the 4 proposals that you mentioned, we'll get into some of the legislation now, that all 4 agree on basic terms: modernization of name, image, likeness, NIL, and revenue sharing, uniformity across all states, and student athlete support. But they disagree on the specifics, right, and the implementation. You mentioned Senator Cantwell and Senator Schmidt's new bill as of last week, the College Sport Competitiveness Act,
there you go.
which would also amend the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 to address the revenue problem. Your site goes on to say saving college sports is the only comprehensive, sustainable fix, protecting student athletes, fans, women's and Olympic sports, maximizing revenue, controlling costs, which is a big piece, right? Solving near-term problems, and permanently preserving the entire ecosystem. The Saving College Sports proposal's goal of saving all sports is in line with 86% of Americans who support preserving and protecting women in Olympic sports. It's a large number of people.
Yeah, so that we were shocked. We went out and did polling early in the process just to see where the American public was, and yeah, 86% of people want to see women's sports and Olympic sports preserved. 86% of people don't agree on anything, right? And so that's a pretty strong signal that I think our elected officials should be paying attention to, and I think they should be held accountable if they don't do it.
With so many policy ideas, some strong advocates for each, how do you get your ideas to the president's desk?
Well, it's a process. I've had a relationship with the president and with people in his staff for a number of years now, and so had some ends, I guess you could say, to to start talking to them even during the transition period right after the election. And so I've been working with them since then on developing ideas. And so again, there has to be a transition at some point from like theory and policy into politics. And that's been, maybe the most challenging thing is not only do we have to find a solution that works and fixes the problem, but we also have to find a solution that is politically tenable. And so, that's the thing that, we've been working on with them. Meanwhile, there have been a lot of things going on in the world. And so, as much as the president does care about college sports, he's had other things he's had to tend to over the last year or so. And so, it's been encouraging recently to me that he's personally gotten much more engaged in it. We just had a big roundtable where he brought a bunch of leaders together to, discuss the issue. And so I think that now the spotlight is squarely on these problems that we have in college sports and squarely on trying to find solutions that everybody can sort of generally agree on. As I said during the roundtable, there are a lot of different agendas, there are a lot of different perspectives. No one is going to get exactly what they want, or there's going to have to be a compromise here that's made, a business deal that's made. And so, that's where some of my business experience comes in, and hopefully can bring some folks together and find solutions. It's not always a zero sum, right? You can sometimes work out creative solutions where everybody wins, and that's what we're hoping to do.
You've expressed you'd like to see the NCAA dismantled and create a federally chartered replacement for the NCAA. Recently, the Big Ten and SEC essentially attacked you in the Saving College Sports proposal to pool media rights. Do you see the NCAA or the power conferences as the bigger issue or problem?
Well, I think the NCAA at very least needs to be reformed in the way that it's set up and governed. It's been a organization that's been governed by committee historically. At one point there were over 100 committees, separate committees that were responsible for different aspects of governance. And the NCAA's slowness, their unwieldiness, is largely the reason that we've gotten to the place that we have. They've made really bad decisions and haven't responded to the changing landscape over the years, and so now we're in this place where everything is chaotic. So they have been a problem. So whether it's replacing them or reforming the way that they operate, one of those two things definitely needs to happen. But then we have the interest of the big conferences and those people who make a lot of money off of these sports today. We're talking about billions of dollars, and so people tend to fight pretty hard when they're trying to preserve their own economic interests, and so you get some selfishness in there. And so again, I've tried to align myself with people who are interested in the greater good, that see the benefit to the whole country, and don't look at sports as a way to college sports as a channel through which they're trying to make money. I view it as a public trust that has value to the entire country, that develops leaders, that provides opportunity to, we're 500,000 plus student athletes in this country, and so trying to find people who are focused on those things that benefit the public good rather than what lines their pockets. And unfortunately, some of those whose pockets are lined by the current brokenness of the system have been very loud and have certainly provided a lot of resistance to good ideas.
Your website in its advocacy piece, says, tell Congress, save college sports by modernizing the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. Doing so will bring in billions of new dollars in revenue, and we have to act quickly because hundreds of college sports programs are being cut right now and likely will never return.
Right.
To save all sports at all schools, we need fair rules, the additional revenue that modernizing the SBA, the Sports Broadcasting Act, will bring to your favorite school. Your site goes on to note the programs cut already to the tune of over 180 programs and at least 95 women's programs. The SAFE Act and the College Sports Competitive Act are both bills that include the SBA amendment to include college sports to provide a legal path to pool the media rights, like your proposal. Is there one pending bill that you support currently?
I really like the Schmidt-Cantwell bill. I think it's great. I haven't seen Senator Cruz's bill. He's said publicly now a couple of times that he is going to include some version of the Sports Broadcasting Act in it, and so that's encouraging. But one of the problems we do have to solve is the problem of revenue, and college sports don't make as much money as they should based on the amount of viewership that they get. The best example is the NBA, which has half as many viewers but makes twice as much money as college football does. And I guess backing up, it's important to note, and most everyone who's watching this knows, that essentially football makes all the money, men's basketball makes a little bit, and the money that's made from football goes to fund all of the other sports, women's sports, Olympic sports. And so making sure that we maximize the revenue that's derived from those sports that are profitable is very, very important. And right now we have this system where we've professionalized the cost side of things. So pay coaches a lot of money, we're now paying players a lot of money, but we still have this amateur system for generation of revenue. It's very disjointed. Each conference makes its own deal, and so they're forced to compete with each other, and the media companies use that against them. But also we're not very smart with how we schedule. Like, the NFL is a great example of how you can maximize revenue. They ensure that their marquee matchups are in their own time slot, and so they don't cannibalize viewership. Whereas, college football will have 6 really good games on, all at the same time, and so they hurt themselves in that way. But just being able to coordinate and be more commercial is very, very important. But we don't have a mechanism through which to do that. In fact, they would be in violation of the law if they did, antitrust law, if they were to coordinate with each other. And so we have to fix that through the Sports Broadcasting Act. It's a model that has worked very well in the professional sports leagues, and there's empirical evidence that it will increase revenue because it has in those leagues. And so, and we've done commission studies and have done all the work to basically prove what everybody in the media industry knows, is that if we pool media rights, we're going to make more money. And so it is a key component to all of this because, in 2024, and 2024 was before the House settlement, before we were paying the players directly from athletic department revenues. The average budget deficit in FBS was $20 million per school per year. And that's not a sustainable amount of money, and that deficit was being filled with, taxpayer dollars, student fees, diverted tuition dollars, those sorts of things, which, that detracts from the academic mission that these universities have, and puts it on the back of the taxpayer. Which, if institutions want to make that investment and make that choice, okay, that's fine if they have to, but they don't have to. There is the media value out there if we just commercially go out and pursue it, and professionalize the way that we're doing things. That won't be necessary, and so there's really no reason for it. Unfortunately, what's happening in a lot of schools, as you mentioned, is that when they look at their athletic budgets, they're having to make tough decisions. They can't give up on football and being competitive in football because that's where the money comes from. So they look at cutting the sports that don't make money. So those are the Olympic sports, those are women's sports. And so that's where the cuts are happening, and it's oftentimes sort of obscured. A school doesn't want to say they're cutting a program outright, but they do reduce the roster spots, they reduce the budgets, they reduce the scholarships. They find ways to save money, so that they can continue to try to be competitive in football, so they can get the viewership, so that they can get the the money that comes from that. So it's a really tough spot that these universities and these athletic departments are in right now, and again, one that is totally unnecessary. There is a solution, and there is a way to solve the problem. The second part of it, as you mentioned, this is when you're trying to solve any business problem, looking at any business losing money, is controlling the cost side of things. And so, there are different ideas there, but pro sports have showed us that you have to have a salary cap that's enforceable. Right now, even this House settlement was supposed to bring us a salary cap. It's that evaporated, almost as soon as it started. And even looking at controlling what coaches are paid. Some of those salaries have gotten out of control. The buyouts are out of control. And I think even most coaches would acknowledge that. So we have to look at this thing as a business, because it is fundamentally. And as much as we don't want to think about it that way, money does matter, and ultimately is the driver, will be the driver to whether college sports survives or it doesn't.
It sounds to me like you have a pretty good understanding of the sports media market.
Well, there are folks that understand it a lot better than I do, and I've leaned on them, and just to check ourselves, and have talked to media experts all over the country, in different sports and internationally. All right, are we thinking about this the right way? Are we missing something? And unanimously, have gotten feedback. No, you're absolutely right. Now, there is disagreement on how much incremental revenue that can be gained, and that's fair. But everyone agrees it's a lot, and we're in the magnitude of billions of dollars per year, and billions of dollars per year solves the problem ultimately.
It sounds like a surplus.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's right.
And as a former football player, you don't see an issue with the football program raising all ships in the athletic department?
No, I think that it's a good thing. The system, we accidentally built this system where profits made from football support the other sports. And like I said, our country has benefited greatly from it, and so that's been a really good thing. And so there's no problem with that necessarily, but I do believe there's opportunity for other sports, if they are properly platformed, to become profitable. We've seen growing interest in women's sports, especially basketball, softball, volleyball. Those types of sports, if they're put on the right platform and they're promoted properly, could potentially become revenue sports one day. And I think that would be a great thing. But they're not going to get the chance to if they're not properly funded and they're not properly promoted and they're not put in the right TV slots and all those kinds of things. And so these are all things that we need to think about how we commercialize, and the same thing goes for some of the men's sports like baseball. I was staggered, when I first got on the Texas Tech board to see how much money our baseball team loses every year. And the crazy thing about it is the better your team is, the more money you lose, because that means you have to travel to more games. And
right.
And so, Americans love baseball. Why can't we make money off of baseball? So these are just questions that need to be answered, and we need to get smart people who are very savvy at maximizing media value involved, and let them run with it, and let them be commercial, and let them solve the problem. Let them figure out how to make more money.
Right. When we say the NCAAs, they're good at putting on championships.
Yeah. And
I think there's a lot of truth to that. But as a swimmer, I've been to the NCAA's championships since I swam a while back.
Yeah.
And I don't think that meet's changed very much.
No, I think the NCAA is great at putting on championships. I do not think the NCAA is a very commercial institution, though. College presidents are, essentially the NCAA is governed by college presidents, right? And I love college presidents, some of the smartest people in the world, but they're not always the best business people. Now some of them are former business professors and are very smart at that, but we are living in a pro sports environment now in college sports, and so we have to just recognize that fact and put people in place who can execute on a professional sports league. And right now, hundreds of college presidents in committees together trying to make good commercial decisions. That doesn't work in any business. It doesn't work in any entity, whether it's a country club or a church or anything else. You can't run things like that and expect the optimized outcome economically.
Yeah, it seems like you have these championships of some of the finest athletes in the world here in our country competing, that people are going to want to watch that.
Oh, they
wanna
absolutely
go.
want to watch it. You know, it's just, but it's a matter of promoting it properly and platforming it properly, and we've done a poor job of doing that.
Recently, the Big Ten and SEC essentially attacked you and the SCS, the Saving College Sports, your initiative proposal to pull media rights. The SEC FTI white paper, where Commissioner Sankey and Commissioner Petiti took the unprecedented step of sending an 8-page white paper to Congress, specifically dismantling your proposal with SCS. They argued that your plan for media rights pooling would introduce bureaucratic and legal chaos, and that the current decentralized model is actually more profitable. Their study even suggested that the current conference system would outperform your $7 billion projection by 2033. Since they're the two most powerful stakeholders in the room, how do you respond to their claim that you have a fundamental misunderstanding of the sports media market?
Well, I was pretty frustrated that they released that paper when they did. I didn't think it made much sense. I definitely was critical of them early on, and needed to be, because people needed to be aware of the fact that they just have kind of this creeping monopoly where they're grabbing more and more of the market share, which is squeezing out more and more schools and more sports. And so, they fired back at me, and we had a little bit of a scuffle. This was a year ago, over a year ago. But then, we had a meeting, got together with Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Energy, and sort of decided we're going to work together, and we're going to try to get at least something passed through the House that can be a base to work from in the Senate. And so we didn't run any more ads. I didn't say anything bad about anybody on Twitter. I was I behaved myself very well. And then they come out with this paper that takes direct shots at our organization and at me. I thought that it was poorly timed. I thought it was distasteful and not very productive. And so I've told those commissioners directly to their face that, look, I grew up in West Texas, and if somebody punches me, I'm going to punch them back. So, I think that's going to continue to be the case. If they want to come to the table and they want to work with us to find solutions that benefit everyone and benefit the entire system, big schools, small schools, revenue sports, non-revenue sports, great, let's do it. Let's have that conversation. In fact, that needs to happen in order for us to find a solution. But if we want to take cheap shots and have, release what they called a white paper, which was actually just a paid advocacy piece that had a million holes in it, they can do that, but it's not going to be productive to finding a solution.
And you had a pretty significant response
I did.
on social media.
I
after
did,
that,
yeah,
right?
I sure did.
What do you see that motivates? It was a good response too. I retweeted that or
Thank you.
re-X'd that or whatever it is now. What do you see that motivates the Power 4, as some call the Power 2 now? Which do you see it as?
Well, I think it would be pretty cool, I'm sure, to be a big, powerful, highly paid commissioner of a conference. And so I think that, some of those folks really enjoy having their jobs and being in control. I think that's the main thing. I know that they're not in alignment with a lot of their members on a lot of the issues. Because we talk to the presidents, we talk to ADs, we know the difficulties that they're having. Even in the Big Ten and the SEC, it's been pretty well documented and publicized that their schools are running massive, unsustainable deficits. Those problems exist inside the big conferences and the small ones. So I think that's the main thing. I think it's selfishness. I think it's that they want to hold on to power, and the reality is that we're not really going after any of them. I don't think there's any reason necessarily that we shouldn't still have conferences, that we shouldn't still have conference commissioners, but we can't create a situation where all of the revenue goes to just a few schools and nobody else gets any. And we can't have a situation where we sacrifice efficiency, economic efficiency for control, which is what we've done right now. They're going to have to come to the table and recognize that there's a whole country out here, and especially if they're trying to get legislation passed, all the small schools have elected representatives too, and all of them have votes, and they matter. And so if you want to get something passed, you're going to have to work with everybody and find a solution that works for everyone, all the schools, all the sports. So have been trying to convey that to them and genuinely do want to work with them. But it's gotten a little bit personal at times, and so that's made it difficult sometimes to have those productive conversations.
Right. Texas Tech is part of the Big 12, your school. Is the Big 12 excited about your advocacy and proposal to pool resources?
Well, I can tell you that our Saving College Sports Group has a representative from every single Big 12 school on it. So our institutions are fully behind the ideas. I have a good relationship with Brett Yormark, our commissioner. I do think that he wants what's best for college sports as a whole, and he's been constructive. And honestly, I feel the same way about Jim Phillips from the ACC. But again, it's difficult for them. They're in a tough spot. They have a lot of different stakeholders, including the media companies, including the other conferences and everything else. And so it's difficult for them to kind of stand out in front and be the ones that are taking the shots. And so I'm happy to do that on their behalf if necessary, and maybe say the things that they aren't necessarily willing to say publicly.
You also mentioned in that tweet, it wasn't short, that one of the two commissioners argued that the status quo is just, ironically, at least one of those two commissioners argued the status quo is just fine, have simultaneously pursued onerous private equity debt deals to paper over the overwhelming deficits many of their member institutions face.
Right.
You have the Big 12 commissioner, you mentioned just Commissioner Yormark. They considered a $800 million to $1 billion investment, which is a 15 to 20% stake. And the Big 10 commissioner, Commissioner Petiti, has considered pursued the $2 billion plus private capital deal with firms, with one regent referring to it as a payday loan. Here, of course, we hear more about private equity with Smash Capital and their proposal with Project Rudy to pool all the FBS media rights as well. Since your framework also advocates for amending the Sports Broadcasting Act to allow for pooling, how does your athlete first model differ from these private equity-backed commercial ventures?
Well, I think the primary difference in what our objective is and what any private equity firms might be is that we're not trying to make money off of it. This is being done. In fact, I'm spending quite a lot of money of my own to try to advance these ideas. And so, we have no profit motivation. But I do agree with a lot of their ideas that are out there that have been presented by different private equity groups. Really, a lot of the folks that are in the commercial sports business and the media business understand and see the inefficiencies in the system and see opportunity for additional money to be made. And so they are trying to find ways to insert themselves in that incremental increase and get a piece of it. And there is probably a role for private capital to play in all of this. When we talk about the Sports Broadcasting Act, our most updated and recent proposal has been, one wherein that SBA would be implemented over the course of a decade or more, because the reality is all the different TV contracts expire at different times. And so you can't just pool everybody immediately, and we're not going to cancel any of the existing contracts or anything like that. And so there is going to have to be some capital come into the system from the outside to help schools bridge between now and the time that more money can come into the system. Now, in order for private equity, private debt, pensions, whoever the source may be, to come in and actually provide this funding, there is going to have to be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel for them, because they're going to have to know that they're going to be able to get paid back. And right now, if a school's running a massive deficit every year, that's not the business or an institution that you'd want to invest in. And so there's a problem with even attracting capital into the current system. So there's really no outlet for the schools except for their own sources of, whether it's institutional debt, whether it's, again, putting it on the backs of the students or taxpayers. That's the only way they can kind of get through. And in my tweet, my reference was really to what the Big Ten has done, which is they've pursued, not only the pension deal, but also entertained other private equity ideas, while saying that everything's okay. The current system works just fine. The current economic setup is, no problem. But we've seen recently Penn State has come out and said that they've accumulated $500 million in athletic debt. Rutgers is running a $90 million a year budget deficit. Those kind of things are not sustainable. And, regardless of the size of the institution, regardless of the size of their endowment, I mean, they can't afford to do that. And eventually, probably now even, the magnitude of those dollars is going to detract from the academic mission, which is fundamentally why we have colleges and universities. And so the problem is getting big enough that it's threatens to take a lot of things down that are not even related to sports.
Right. Sort of turned on its head in a lot of institutions
Absolutely.
already. So you're not against it, private equity investing in college sports, but you have personal experience in your
I do.
business. Private
Yeah, and
equity.
my only concern with private money coming in is that when you go and invest in a business, you know, the first thing you look at is, all right, do we have any lines of business or anything we're doing that is losing money? And you immediately cut those. And so I'm concerned that if there aren't strict controls over how the money is brought in, that you know, that those outside sources of capital are going to be drawn toward the idea of cutting women's sports and Olympic sports that lose money. And so that's fundamentally the number one thing we don't want to see happen. And so that is a concern that I have. But I think that can be done. I think it can be. I think that private capital can be brought in a way that will preserve those sports. But again, there just has to be that light at the end of the tunnel where we know that incremental revenue is coming. Like, we're going to make more money at some point in the future. You will be paid back, even though we are going to continue to run deficits for the next, you know, several years.
Right. So there's significant risk on the institution side with possibly having to slice programs.
Right.
And there's risk on the PE side for sure.
Absolutely.
There's clearly a have and have-nots divide, right? There probably always has been. The Power 5, Power 4, now the Power 2. And Cody, you've been a vocal advocate for rising tide lifts all boats approach to ensure the survival of the entire collegiate ecosystem. I appreciate that as a former college swimmer. To play the devil's advocate for a moment, if Texas Tech were already sitting in the SEC with that specific brand of security and revenue, do you think you'd be spending quite this much time in the trenches of federal policy reform, or is there something about the current Big 12 or other that makes this urgency of this mission clearer for you?
Well, you know, I was made aware of the problem through my work at Texas Tech, and you know, and I do care deeply about that school, but Texas Tech is going to be fine regardless of what happens. In fact, the chaos that has kind of emerged over the last 5 years or so has benefited Texas Tech pretty tremendously, because it just so happens that we sit on top of the largest oil field in the world, and Texans, especially those in the oil business, love writing checks to sports. And so we have done great with NIL. We've built, you know, great facilities. You know, our university is very financially healthy. So we're not in a bind financially. We would actually benefit from continued chaos. And so it's actually, I'm working against my own interests, you know, but I truly do believe in the institution of college sports, and I truly do believe in the opportunity that it provides to so many kids, you know, and I've seen it. Again, I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in my teammates. You know, young men and women it's their only chance to get out of horrible situations they have at home. You know, it's a chance to get an education. It's a chance for social mobility. You know, it's the only program that has put more kids through college than college sports is the GI Bill. And you know, that's pretty amazing. And so for this country, it's a treasure, and you know, it benefits us in ways that we don't even fully think about or appreciate. We just take for granted. And I want to make sure that that opportunity exists for everybody. I think that the opportunity that a kid gets to, you know, high jump at Fresno State is just as important as the opportunity that a kid gets to play defensive tackle at the University of Georgia. I think that it's equally life-changing for both of them. You know, they both get an education, and you know, they both get the chance to develop themselves as people and get better and stronger and more capable. And so I want to see that continue for everyone. And of course, I want it to continue at Texas Tech, but I truly do want it to continue all over the country.
Specifically on the issue of pooling media rights, and in like your proposal and the new Senator Cantwell and Senator Schmidt bill providing that antitrust exemption, allowing institutions to pool their media rights, isn't that what the biggest sports leagues already do?
They do. Yeah, so the original Sports Broadcasting Act gave the antitrust exemption vis-a-vis media negotiations to the professional sports leagues. That was the whole point of the bill, but they specifically left college sports out of it.
So essentially, this is proposed as a college version of...
Absolutely. It's nothing new. It's, it's just, we're going to just start operating the way that professional sports leagues have been operating for decades now.
Commissioner Sankey has frequently warned that unsustainable economic pressures such as unchecked NIL, the transfer portal, and direct revenue sharing, and we should add another unchecked cost drivers, facilities, coaches' salaries, enormous contract buyouts for not coaching even a day, threaten the survival of non-revenue sports. He noted that when expenses rise by 22% due to the new player costs, there will be impacts associated with that in other sports. So while he correctly identified the rising costs in football, how do you think he would explain an unwillingness to pool rights to increase that total pie for all college athletes and reconcile that with the shared concern that he also says he has about the Olympic and women's sports being at a breaking point?
Well, I think that a lot of things Greg says are fairly contradictory, and that's one of them, right? If you're going to look at a business and try to solve a problem, you have to look at the cost side and the revenue side. I mean, everyone who's ever done business knows that. But he's right about the cost. We have to find some way to control the cost. I think also, his league is under quite a lot of pressure because many of his schools and best brands are not performing very well because they don't have the big donors, and so they've lost some ground relative to like when the FBS era started. They used to win everything, and they didn't have a team in the championship this year, and so I think that they're feeling quite a bit of pressure and a difficulty keeping up just because they don't have the donors that some other places do. Texas Tech being a good example, like we have donors, so we have been able to become much more competitive, and in fact beat the SEC schools for recruits regularly now, and are competitive with them on the field. And so I think that that's probably something that's on his mind a little bit, but he wants to attack it through controlling costs more, which I do actually agree with. I think we have to do, but doesn't want to relent or release any kind of control that he has over anything really. And so he views, for some reason, pooling of media rights is a loss of control for him, and that's something he doesn't want to give up.
Right. Critics argue that if the legislation forces that pooling and the revenue share that the big two don't like, that they'll simply break away to form their own professionalized super league. How does the SCS plan legally or structurally tether those giant brands to the rest of the collegiate system?
Yeah, so I think that has to be stipulated, that if we're going to give an antitrust exemption, it can't allow them to split off and do their own thing. Right now, they would not be allowed to do that under antitrust law because they would control too much of the market. They would be immediately sued if they tried to. I think that that's something that's important. Again, this has to be a solution that benefits the entire country. And that's not only is that the right thing to do, but it's also the only politically tenable thing to do because, as I mentioned, every school, every community, every state has elected officials that have a vote in whether this legislation gets passed, and so it has to be good for everyone.
Commissioner Sankey mentioned very recently the possibility of the Power 2 breakaway if that pooling passed. He also said people are saying the SEC wants SEC-only governance, and that eventually that may lead to SEC-only competition. Given the arms race and the school and conference competitiveness, why would they threaten to have their own governance, essentially creating more rules for themselves as compared to other schools and conferences? Well,
that's a really good question that I don't understand, and I find it interesting that Senator Schmidt from the state of Missouri, which is the only state in the SEC that only has one school that is an SEC school, Senator Schmidt's the one that introduced the legislation and included the SBA in it. So I think that he may not be in complete alignment with his members on what he's saying there.
And given that financial growing gap that's now appearing even between the Big Ten and the SEC, do you believe a breakaway truly offers a sustainable path for the entire athletic department, or does it prioritize football at the expense of the sports they've pledged to protect?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, if they break away and say we're going to take our ball and go home and we're going to take all of the money and we're going to go away with it, that threatens all the sports at all the other schools. It even threatens the sports at their schools. If you're going to turn this thing into football only, and we're just going to try to make as much as we can, and pay players as much as we can, and pay coaches as much as we can, the other sports are going to suffer, and the other schools are going to suffer.
And if the economic reality of that possible breakaway in a even more decentralized media, do you think there are risks for schools in the States? You mentioned lower donor density.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a pretty risky proposition for them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it would be disastrous, not only for the whole country, but for the schools that participate in it. I think you better be careful what you wish for if you do something like that.
Mm-hmm. And we know that probably drove the conference realignment decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reaching out to Texas and Oklahoma to get more of that, but that still doesn't quite reach the Big Ten, New York, DC,
Right.
all of the metro.
Yeah, the whole conference realignment thing is being driven by this ridiculous media marketing system that we have.
Mm-hmm.
The conferences feel the need to continually expand. They want, coverage from every time zone and every major media market so that they can get a bigger media deal. If you pull together and you take away that financial incentive, then we can see more regionalized conferences again. And so we can see rivalries renewed. We can see more interest in the actual physical games themselves. We've seen declines in attendance at many schools, and schools having difficult times making money off their game day experience, and that's caused a divide even in the conferences that we're talking about here, the Big Two. There's a huge division between the bottom of those conferences and the top, both competitively and economically. And a lot of that's just because we've created these unnatural, alignments of conferences that people aren't as interested in.
SCS proposal includes a unique provision for a coaching salary cap. We have these. It's said that we don't have a revenue problem; we have a cost problem in college sports. Right. What is that proposal?
I think that's something we're going to have to debate, but I think it'd be really fair for the player salary cap to be the same as the total coaching salary cap. And you can't pay the coaches any more than you pay the players. I mean, that seems equitable, but
in the aggregate, the coaches.
In the aggregate, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that would be a good starting place.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that needs to be dug into. And again, we have to control these costs, and this arms race that has been so destructive certainly extends to the amount that's paid to coaches. And so we have to find a way to resolve that.
And the school could still have the discretion to, if they want to pay their head coach $10 million, whatever the highest numbers are, 13.
Yeah.
Possibly they could do that, but maybe not have a 100-person staff for
right.
their football team.
Exactly.
Or maybe trim some of that around and give
them.
There
There are different ways to do it, and you don't want to take away opportunity from young coaches either. And we want to develop. Some of the most influential people in my life are my coaches, and so we want to make sure we're developing good coaches and we're not cutting people out of the system, and we're being fair with all that. So there are a lot of things to think about there, but there does need to be some kind of control. I think that the situation we saw, several situations we've seen with these just massive buyouts that end up being funded with taxpayer money, essentially, or tuition dollars, are absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody agrees with that. And I think most coaches would agree with that as well.
Right.
So at very least, we need to put some limits on buyouts and, try to just, protect those catastrophic sort of financial events from occurring.
There were several former coaches, football coaches, at the roundtable with you, with the president recently. Have you received any feedback on the college coaching salary caps?
Yeah, what I found is that most coaches are not necessarily in it for the money. I mean, they're happy to take the money and they enjoy it, but most of them are in it because they love the game and they love developing young people. And so, they're really happy with. They were happy when they were all making, $200,000 a year, and they would not be in a different line of work if now they're making $20 million a year or whatever. So it's something that I think that they would all be very open to and be very reasonable on.
Mm-hmm. So Cody, if we were to wrap up here, and ask about the SCORE Act that was discussed as bringing that back. You mentioned that as the first one to work with, and perhaps merging of bills. Do you see that making a run in the House?
I do. I think that by the time that this video is seen, hopefully that bill will have passed the House. And I think that it does have the votes to. It's been amended and negotiated and worked on quite a lot. And I think it's in a form now where it can get the votes that it needs to pass.
Do you think the SCORE would make it through the Senate as is?
No, absolutely not. It will not make it through the Senate. It'll have to be negotiated and amended and added to and taken away from and all that kind of stuff in the Senate.
Right, and you're probably still studying the College Sports Competitiveness Act, which just came out, right?
Yeah, yeah. I like it though. I think that it has a lot of good ideas in it, and I was, really thrilled that it was bipartisan, because that was, something that's been said a lot is that we can't get, the parties to work together. This is not a partisan issue. This is something where Democrats and Republicans can come together and show the American people that they can actually do their job and legislate and work and fix a problem that we all want fixed. And so I was very encouraged by that, and think a lot of both of those senators, Schmidt and Cantwell. I have a ton of respect for both of them. They're both very plugged in on this college sports issue, both understand it very deeply, and I was proud that they championed that bill and put it out there and got people talking about it.
Right, and it's should be a bipartisan effort, right?
Absolutely.
It's college sports, it's not a partisan effort.
Yeah.
Well, Cody Campbell, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing in college sports. It's been a pleasure. You're so authentic. I think, honest broker. And I'm really happy that there's people like you involved in college sports who are investing and not expecting a financial return, but clearly have so much passion and care for all of college sports.
Well, thank you, and I very much appreciate this honor. It means a great deal to me.
Great. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.